Excellent. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. It looks like we got almost all of our participants, which is a good sign. That means that almost everybody was able to get the first major directive of Virtual Institute, which was to jump to the very, very next room. So thanks everybody for taking care of that for us. So I'm Mike McConville again. I'm kind of going to be your Zoom guru this week. And so one of the things we wanted to do is that given how unique this situation is, the fact that we're going to be putting together 65 hours of content online during the next week. We wanted to make sure that we had some policies and procedures in place so that all of you know precisely how to ask questions, how to interact, how to have as similar an institute experience to what you're used to in person online. Of course, we know that there's a lot going on that we can't be under the dome. It's not necessarily the same when you can't go out and have lunch with people or go out to dinner afterwards. Of course, we understand all that, but for the teaching itself, we wanted to make sure that all of you had the best experience possible. So what we're going to do is walk through just a few of the procedures that we've put in place for all of the possible contingencies that can happen when having a large scale online get together like we have today. So all of you should be seeing a shared screen. And on it, you'll see the first slide of a PowerPoint presentation. This is a slide you're going to see at the beginning of almost every single session. And it's meant to make sure that you're in the right place. I can remember back the first day of classes, there was always 2 or 3 students that would come to the door, look at me in the face and realize that their professor was not, in fact, a bearded man, but someone else, and then turned around and walked away. And we don't want you to have that same virtual experience. So every single session that is going to be streamed online or is going to be recorded is going to have one of these opening slides. So, of course, this is procedures for Spitz Virtual Institute. I'm your host, Mike McConville. That means you can find me in the chat window, whether during this or any session to follow. And of course, we have the basics, time and date. But also, it's really important that you know who the technicians are for each session. For the most part, session tech is the person who can make sure that if there's an issue with Zoom, or if you're needing to go to a breakout room with a proctor in one of the open labs, you'd want to go to the person who's the session tech for that session. And so since I'm presenting, Brad and Chris, so that's Brad Rush and Chris Seal, you'll see that we'll have Institute in front of our names as we go through the participants windows. Those are the people that you can go to and privately chat with, and they're going to be able to help you. We're all on the same page when it comes to our Zoom knowledge, and that way we can ensure that no matter who you're talking to, we're gonna make sure that you're in good hands. At the bottom of each slide are going to be 2 icons. The first is a YouTube icon. That indicates which of the 3 YouTube channels this session is going to be streamed on. Now, if this is the only way that you're going to access us is through YouTube, it's probably a pretty useful piece of information. It also means that if you were to go and want to run another session concurrently, and some of you may just want to run a second session on a monitor and drop in whenever you'd like, that's your indicator of which channel, which video channel we're sending this to. And then the last icon is a little computer, letting you know whether or not you're going to need your computer open for the session. So for something like this, where we're going through a lot of our Zoom protocols, we'd love for you to have the computer open, ready to access this at all times. For the most part, this is going to be an indicator of whether or not you need Preview Suite and ATM4 open. So if this is the overview of Full Dome curriculum later in the day, you might want to follow along in Preview Suite, or you might want to kick back and put your feet up and let Dr. Bradstreet walk you through the Full Dome curriculum himself. It's completely up to you. These are, of course, recommendations, but we don't want you to think that you're going to be in Preview Suite 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. At some points, you can just sit back and enjoy the presentations themselves. So before we move on to the procedures and policies, one of the things that we often do at Institute is interactivity. We want people to be able to ask questions. Uh, but that's a problem when we're in an online environment, especially one where we're recording, where most of you, if not all of you, are going to be muted, and then you don't want to talk over somebody, or maybe you're one of the shy types who doesn't want to speak out loud. How can we ensure that all of you have access to that question and answer? And so, what we're going to be doing a lot of this afternoon is focusing on ensuring that everyone's voice gets heard in the clearest way possible. This is Institute. And for those of you who are returners, you see a lot of familiar faces. If you were in person, it is, for some of us, it is a really, really important social week on our calendar to be able to see people that we haven't seen all year, and be able to interact. So, you've seen people in the chat talk about how they really want to give hugs and it would be great for everybody to be together. That's kind of one of the things that makes Spitz Institute so unique, is that camaraderie and that sort of familiarity that we have with one another. But that can be exaggerated when we're online. This is, of course, a little bit more of a laid back experience. Most of you are in your homes. You can pretty much do whatever you'd like. If you want to watch this from the bed or the couch or wherever, your car, it doesn't matter. That's really one of the great aspects of the virtual institute. But we just want a quick reminder that this still is a professional development opportunity, that a lot of you are doing this because it is necessary for you to be able to be the very, very best that you can be at your jobs, to run your domes more effectively. And as we prepare, hopefully in the next few months, to sort of come out into a different post COVID, whatever that looks like. We want you to all be able to get as much out of this professionally as you can. So just remember that you are being recorded. We are streaming this. You don't want to say anything that you wouldn't want recorded. We'd like to keep, everything kind of clean and family friendly. Doesn't mean we're not going to have a great time. We just want to have that reminder in place. And then, of course, because you may be in your own home, we ask that you use some personal discretion. um, if you have to leave your computer, probably a good idea to mute your microphone if it's not already. Remember that people can see things through your camera that you may not think they're able to see. So just take that into consideration as you move about over the next couple of days. Just want to make sure that nobody gets a unique view of either you or your home while we're here attending Institute. So the very central part of our procedures has to do with the schedule. For those of you that have been online, if you're in this room right now, that means you are able to use the schedule correctly. You'll notice that the schedule really is at the heart of what we're going to be doing this week. And so at the very bottom of the Google Sheets page, you'll notice that there are going to be tabs. Those tabs correspond to each of the days, Monday through Friday. You'll see that there is a tab for the YouTube channel listing. We're going to be updating that every day. So if you see 1, 2, and 3, simply hover over the number, click on the link, and now you're live at the YouTube page. Right now, we're in procedures. We're at the second of what's going to be about 6 streamed sessions to Channel One today. And then an extremely important place for you throughout the week is going to be the resources page. It's the final tab in the schedule. It's where you're going to find the course notes and files. That's going to take you to a Spitz Dropbox account, where you can download all of the course notes for each of the individual instructors, as well as work files, the Spitz Full Dome curriculum, and documents that refer to certain aspects of Spitz service. Of course, if you have any questions about those, you can contact the instructors themselves. If it's service related, your best point of contact throughout the week is going to be Eric Briggs. So you'll see Eric in a number of the presentations. He's going to be assisting me this afternoon as the two of us co-host Beyond the Basics. But for the most part, Eric is going to be one of our roving staff members. And if you can get a hold of him for things that are service related, he is certainly going to be the point of contact to get you connected with the right people as quickly as possible. But what makes this week unique, our virtual institute, versus anything we've done in the past, is that the entire week will be concurrent. We have 3 tracks. The first is designed primarily for beginners. The second track is intermediate, but probably a bit more advanced. If you want to get an idea, this would be first week would be your track 1, while you've been to institute a couple of times might be track 2. Track 3 is going to be special interest. But to give you a better idea of how to get yourself in the mindset of which track you'd like to participate in, I'm going to turn it over briefly to Scott Huggins for a little bit more of an in-depth view into how your decision-making process should look as we move through the next couple of days and which session tracks you should be focusing on.
Yeah, you'll notice that for this afternoon sessions in particular, you'll see a Starry Night introduction, a Starry Night beyond the basics, and then a more advanced Starry Night. And just to give you some clarity on which is which, if you're brand new to Starry Night, if you haven't used it or you've used it so little that you're not familiar with the interface, then the introductory course would be good for you. And that's also a good course. You know, me in particular, even if I know a software a little bit, I like to go at a very slow pace. I like a lot of review and I like a lot of exercises. So if you're looking for the slower paced session, that'll be the introduction to Starry Night. That's track 1. If you're the kind of learner who's always saying, speed it up, go faster, you know, I got it, move on to the next example, then that's Starry Night Beyond the Basics. Or if you've had maybe a year under your belt, but you know, you feel like you know a third or a quarter of Starry Night's capabilities, then Beyond the Basics will probably be your level. That will be most of the information that's in the introduction, but it'll be at a faster pace. And then the third example, the third track, is an advanced Starry Night session, and I'll be conducting a session about the user interface. And user interface assumes that you've really learned Starry Night. These are going to be the more techie, geeky things behind the scenes or interesting things about the user interface that allow you to customize it. But it assumes that you're pretty confident and capable in Starry Night. So if you're thinking that's the advanced, I'm going to learn my way through Starry Night, that won't be the case. It will be more, you know, really digging into the user interface and getting stuff out of it. So that's it for the 3 courses, and that'll hold for the next day and a half or so.
All right, thank you, Scott. I'm going to go ahead and reshare that. Get rid of that screen for us. I'll go ahead and continue. Let me see. So you should be. We're back here at the training tracks. One of the things we really want to stress to everyone is feel free to choose your own pace. There is no right or wrong place to be. It is where you feel most comfortable learning. One of the things that we made sure to shut off were all of those little chimes as people move in and out of rooms. Um, and that means that you can move from one room to the other without disrupting the proctors or the instructors. All you have to do is click on the link for the session that you'd like to jump to, and you'll be taken there. So no worries about interrupting in the middle of a presentation. At this point, the instructors will not even be able to notice that. Go where you feel most comfortable. And then, of course, all of these are going to be simulcast on YouTube. So when we have a session that is everyone together, like we have right now, that is almost always going to be on YouTube channel 1. And then the sessions will break down almost always to YouTube 1, YouTube 2, and YouTube 3 for tracks 1, 2, and 3, respectively. Of course, every day as we update the YouTube schedule on the schedule document, and for each of the Institute billboards that you see at the very, very beginning of each session. That way you'll know precisely where things are and where to go and click to work through that. But of course, our main our main avenue of working this week is going to be through Zoom, and so I know a lot of you have gotten very, very used to Zoom over the last couple of months, and since we don't want to assume that everyone knows how everything in Zoom works, we do want to go over a little bit of a refresher course of how to operate Zoom effectively in an environment like this. So if this is kind of old hat to you, we do apologize, but we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, everyone's given the same information, so that, more importantly, everyone has the ability to interact and participate. Now, most of you are participating with your video off. About half of you have camera on, the other half the video off. We don't mind one way or the other. Some instructors may prefer to see a lot of eyes looking at them and be able to get a lot of feedback from that. If you're moving around, if you're not necessarily be able to be at your desk the whole time, we completely understand. You can turn off your video. In most cases, if you'd like to ask a question or you're going to be asking a question through the audio means, we would ask that you put your video on as well. In your lower left-hand corner of the screen, of course, you're going to see your audio and video buttons. If at any point it seems like you can't figure out where the audio is coming from, all you have to do is click that little up arrow next to the microphone, and then you have all of your microphone and speaker inputs and outputs. That's the best place to troubleshoot if anything should go wrong. And of course, you can use that to mute and unmute yourself. You can use that to turn your video on and off. If you've got a virtual background, feel free to use it. We're not going to really mind. For the most part, though, what we would like to see everyone do is have access to the participants and chat windows as often as possible. And so down there at the bottom of your screen, most of you are going to see participants first. You should see a number next to that. Right now, we're at 53 participants. The chat will be next to that. When you click on your participants window, when you click on that button, you'll see a participants window that will pop up. For some of you, it may pop up as an individual window, one that isn't connected to the screen. Others may see it docked to one side of your videos or the other. But what's really great about the participants window is that you are able to raise your hand. So most of you in that window should see a raise hand button. And if you do, go ahead and click it and raise your digital hand for all of us to see. Great. All right. I'm seeing lots of blue hands that show up. The best part about this is that for the instructors, when you raise your digital hand, you rise to the top of the queue. And that means that the very first person who raised their hand digitally was Ben Gordon. Second was Megan McCullen. And I can see that 1, 2 here in my participants window. It's a great opportunity for me to queue up who I'm going to answer next. This is the most effective way of getting the attention of an instructor, because you can put your hand up and then you can leave it there. You don't have to keep worrying about holding your hand up, or, kind of the old school way of you had to like prop your arm up on the desk because it was 10 minutes before the teacher would see you. Here I can see it in the order that it was placed in. Now let's see if we can get everybody to lower their hands. And they start to disappear. Of course, as the host for the session, I have the ability to lower all of your hands automatically. I can mute and unmute all of you, but we're going to try to use that as judiciously as possible. We want to make sure that all of you feel like your voices can be heard. And so if it's Leslie Barnhill, who has had her hand up for a while, then I can choose Leslie, unmute her, she can ask her question, and we can move on. The second way of asking questions, or at least beginning the process of asking questions, is going to be to utilize the chat. And if you open up your chat window, you'll notice that you can talk to everyone in the room. But if you go to the bottom, you can also talk to people individually. You could talk to just the co-hosts and the hosts. You could talk to another person by themselves, or, of course, everyone in there. So gonna regret this, but let's send a quick hello to everyone in the chat. All of you just go on ahead and say hello, and you're just gonna see how fast this thing can move. Yeah, So, um, this is the instructor's nightmare. It's why we always will have a second person in the room with us, so that I'm not looking at that the whole time, and just look, everybody's saying hello, and that's great. That's the other very effective way of putting in your questions. Whoever is working with the instructor, or in some cases, you may have two instructors in the room. So after lunch, of course, you're going to move into uh, Intro to Starry Night, or Beyond the Basics, or Advanced User Interface. And all of those are going to have multiple hosts, and each host has the ability and responsibility to watch the chat and the participants window while things go on. So I can look at this and say, Leslie, hi, question. How do you lower your hand? I believe, Leslie, you had already done that. I can lower everyone's hands for them manually. Or as I answer questions, I will lower your hand for you. It's usually the easiest way to do that. And you can see that there's some questions there. Is there a time lag? The longest I've seen is about a second. So for the most part, if you're clicking it, it should pop up pretty quickly. And I'm going to be able to see that in almost real time. See, and everybody's helping each other. That is a great opportunity to engage with other people in the room as well. Oftentimes, you may have a question that someone else can very, very easily give you the answer to, and oftentimes do that much, much faster than an instructor or a proctor. And we'll get to those distinctions in names in just a second. The last thing is when it comes to muting and sharing. Of course, everyone in the room is a known Spitz customer or a person who is supposed to be here. If any of you were to do something nefarious, I guess would be the right word, we know exactly who you are, and we can report you, and then we can shame you. And honestly, it's not a smart idea. So, like, if you're Scott Taylor, don't be pulling any shenanigans. And see, exactly, I found the face. He's there. Everybody's good. So if you pull any shenanigans, of course, we'll know. That doesn't, of course, mean that we want people to have the opportunity to interrupt one another. One of the great things about Zoom is that with good moderation, people feel like they can talk and not risk being talked over or interrupted or ignored, because we can put the spotlight on that individual. So what we were going to try to do amongst the instructors is keep a pretty strong mute policy in place. It's a lot easier for everyone else if the only sound is coming from the instructors. We want to make sure that you don't accidentally unmute yourself and then go on a phone call, and then we hear about all of the sort of details of your life, or we find out what you're ordering for lunch. Either way, we want to give you that privacy. We want to ensure that there's still that distinct line between institute and the rest of your life. So keep that in mind. We're going to try to keep that mute as strong as possible, and we also want to make sure that we can use the mute and unmute tools to be able to move discussion along, so we don't have one or two people kind of consolidating all of the time and having control over the conversation. We want to give everybody the same ability to engage. For those of you who have been to Institute before, you know, at the end of each week, we have a little bit of downtime where we kind of go over how Institute was. And we want a lot of feedback, especially this week, with this very, very new format. We want that dialogue to be able to work effectively. So before we move on past the Zoom overview, any questions? And so now you get to try things out. If you have any questions, send that in the chat or raise your hand here in the participants window. And if not, it's totally fine. So I'm seeing a no from Candace. You'll also notice there are a number of reactions. Yes, no, go slower, go faster. And then there's some other ones with like a coffee cup and a clock or something. I could see that Candace does not have a question. And that works out too. That's good information for me. And I can see in the chat we're doing about the same as well. I'm liking this. So what we're going to do is move on. Uh, Power problems. It is the summertime. And I've come to find out that living in Pennsylvania, if you have a thunderstorm and the wind gets above about 12 miles per hour, the lights can go out. Tree falls over, takes out a couple power lines, and there's 45,000 people without power for a week, I think. Um, but since we're all at home and we are dispersed enough where we should be able to get by if anybody were to lose power. We do know that this can happen. And if any of the session hosts do lose power, if instructors lose power at their home, we have a contingency plan in place. If you are in a room where the instructor disappears, they don't come back for a minute or two, uh, go on ahead and move to one of the other rooms and alert the tech in that room that this is the case. So if I were to lose power right now, all of you would the meeting would end, and then you kind of be left out there. Best thing then to do was one of the other instructors would come in, open up a room, and if worst comes to worst, JT will send out a mass email so that everybody can get the Zoom link and get back to where they're going to be. But when we're in concurrent sessions and maybe only one of the sessions decides to go out, we're going to delay the track at least 30, if not more, 30 to 60 minutes, and update the schedule as quickly as we can so that you can see if there's anything that we might need to move to a different day or that we might only go into something that might only be on YouTube and recorded rather than it be completely live. So we're going to make those calls, of course, in real time. But we want you to know that if anybody's power does go out, if any of the instructors are unable to teach, we are going to try to update that schedule as quickly as possible so that we can keep Institute running nice and smooth. I believe that should cover everything I've got for Virtual Institute policies and procedures. So if there's any questions about things we haven't discussed, if you have questions about the schedule, about YouTube, about how we're going to be doing things day in and day out, now would be the time. And of course, we do have all of our instructors here in the room, so any questions that can be fielded as well, since we are thankfully a little bit ahead of schedule already. Then of course I can open it up. I can open the floor. Um, Thank you, Kelly. Kelly has informed me that we skipped over one important aspect of Zoom. It's called the breakout room. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to utilize a breakout room, it is the same thing as finding an instructor or a proctor in one of the domes and asking for one-on-one help. Except here in Zoom, what you'd want to do is if you're stuck on something, say you're in one of our open lab sessions and you want to talk to Dan or to Kelly or to Todd or myself or Eric, whoever, and you want to talk to them one-on-one, maybe allow them a little bit of control over Starry Night so that they can point things out for you. What we're able to do is have each host the breakout, the session tech for that time is able to open up a breakout room that you can then be sent to, and it's essentially a one-on-one breakout room. What we're going to do now is show you how those breakout rooms work with the power that I currently have in these hands. So I see we have 49 participants. I really just kind of want to send you all to like 3 rooms. There's going to be about 15, 16 of you in each. And as a host, I am able to manually send people to a breakout room. In this case, if you wanted to do some one-on-one work, or if we wanted to do a breakout session, I could automatically generate 3 different rooms. And I can see, okay, breakout room 1, good. Breakout room number 2, that looks pretty nice. All right. And with these options, I will send you all to the room automatically. The breakout room will close in precisely 1 minute. And when it does, you come right back to the room. So here we go. Got everybody set? Power. Here we go. Good. We've been invited, and now you all should disappear. And so for those of you who are watching on YouTube, when you are streaming directly with breakout rooms, the host that's left is going to be the only person that's left in the room. But you can see, as time will go on, that individuals can exit those breakout rooms as they choose. In this case, we've closed down all of the rooms, and each of the participants is kind of sent right back here to the main room.
And then Scott said, oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Your godlike powers, Mike.
What's that?
Your godlike powers.
Demigod at best. I mean, the ability to move people into rooms against their will is not like it's not a major superpower. It's not like flying, but it's nice having. And of course, so you caught me at the very, very end there, sort of talking to myself. When everyone leaves for the breakout rooms, the host is left by themselves. And if you are streaming, and this will go for the future if you're utilizing Zoom rooms, if you're streaming and everyone leaves, it's just you, and you're just kind of sitting there. So what you need to do more than anything is not do anything you wouldn't have, on the internet. So you just kind of sit there and look at the camera. That's probably fine. But in that case, after a minute, all of the breakout rooms closed. You're all back here, and that's how breakout rooms will work throughout the week. For the most part, we're going to stick to the one-on-one or the two-on-one, where you're able to get the personal specific help on ATM4 and other problems, but wanted to give you all an idea of how these breakout rooms work. JT, I see you've got your hand up. Go on ahead.
Yeah, no, Nate was mentioning when we were in the breakout room that if you're in the breakout room, your chat is for the breakout room.
Correct.
Not for the whole rest of the group. I thought that was interesting to mention.
And Christian, go ahead.
Thanks. I noticed when we came back from the breakout that I had like a list of participants open and a chat window open. It looks like I have to reopen all that. Do you happen to know if there's a way to automatically restore to whatever chat or participant lists we had open?
It is a known request to Zoom right now. The way that the internal code looks at it is that it's a separate room entirely and that you're coming back to a separate room. But having gone through and seen what some of there's some good stuff that Zoom, if they ever get around to it, can add. That is one of the lists, is to have a breakout room is a sub address, so that when you come back to the main room, everything is as you had it before, including chat. So fingers crossed that in one of the updates, that's something that they're going to give us.
Okay, thank you.
So, and of course, you saw how easy it was to take those questions. And then Emma says, should we try and catch up if we switch between tracks that are building on themselves? That's a very, very good question. Because of the nature of the tracks themselves and the fact that all of them are going to be streamed, if you're showing up 40 minutes into a 50-minute session, that may be a little bit too late in some cases. But for example, a lot of it will depend on the nature of the session itself. So in Beyond the Basics, what we're going to be doing, for example, is sort of smaller, bite-sized Beyond the Basics work, rather than something that is going to long build. It's not going to be serialized. These are sort of, this is episodic. These are little episodes that you might be able to jump into, rather than having it be one that builds on the other. In some cases, that will be that may not be the case in the intro to Starry Night, where you need everything to sort of build up on itself, and so that ends up being a lot of, if you get in the room, you feel like you're getting a little bit behind, then it's probably a good idea maybe that evening to go back and check the YouTube from that day for the other session, see if that's a means to catch you up. But a great question there. If you leave a breakout room by mistake, you go back to the main room. And if you go back to the main room, the host can then send you back into the breakout room if need be. If you leave the room entirely, if something happens and you click the wrong X and you leave the room entirely, just go on back to the schedule, click the link for the session that's currently open, and then you should find yourself back into the room within a few seconds. All right. I think we're in really great shape since we're basically just running into lunch. So maybe we'll take the last 90 seconds or 2 minutes here to turn it back over to JT, because I know we have a few new people that have made it here into the second session, and we want to make sure that they get introduced properly. So JT, I'm going to turn that over to you.
So we have Laura from Ohio that's joined us, and if she would like to say hello, a little bit about where you are, what you're up to, and then after that we could either go to, I don't know if Jennifer Bartlett wants to say anything. If not, we'll go to Karen, our coworker from Salt Lake City. So, but first, Laura.
Hi, everybody. I've lost track of how many institutes I've been to. I run the Apple Planetarium in Northwest Ohio. We are completely closed at the moment, but I have a second job at the same university. I run an adult ed program. So if I'm not in the institute today, it's because I don't teach the classes there, I'm hosting them. And so that other job has kind of ramped up as the planetarium has ramped down. So I'm still employed. But I'm really, really glad to be here and see so many friendly faces.
Well, we're glad too. Jennifer Bartlett, did you want to say anything? If not, that's okay. 5, 4. Oh, hi.
I don't have much to say. This is my first Spitz Institute.
Great. Okay, that's fine. Good to see you. And Karen from ENS, are you here?
Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Klamzinski. I am the Education and Training Specialist at ENS for Digistar Systems, and this is my first Spitz Institute, so I'm interested to learn more about SciDome. So hi, and thank you for letting me join you.
Thanks. Are there any other people that we've like totally skipped today? Because it was tougher than I thought it was to sort of sort through that list this morning. Okay. Not and like I said, there's like 2 or 3 who were unavailable this morning, and you might see them pop in later or tomorrow. And back to Michael.
Thanks, JT. All right, and that means that we went 34 seconds over, which is great. But we also started 12 minutes later than we should have. So we're actually doing really well right now. That means, of course, it's now time for the first lunch session of Spitz Institute. And so what we're going to do each day is have a room open for people to eat lunch together if they just want to kind of chat and network and have fun. It is by no means required. It is just a place for all of you to be able to go and talk to each other, catch up, all that sort of thing. In the schedule, you'll notice that on Tuesday and once again on Thursday, the lunchroom will remain open throughout the afternoon. So we're going to keep that open as a networking room. If you don't want to do ATM4 fundamentals or custom databases, you can go to the room and talk to somebody or do your own work, whatever you'd like. They're there for you. So we're going to exit out of this particular room, end this session. Chris is going to be our host for lunch. So once he gets that room up and running, feel free to go ahead and click on that link. We should have everything ready in about 2 or 3 minutes. So until then, thank you all for policies and procedures, and we'll see you at lunch.